It started with an old man, just a frail figure struggling to walk, using nothing but two worn-out sticks as crutches. Most people passed by without a second glance, but Tucker Carlson stopped, and in that moment, with one simple decision, he set off a chain of events that no one saw coming. What happened next would leave millions speechless and change lives forever. It was a chilly afternoon in downtown Washington, D.C. The streets buzzed with hurried footsteps, car horns, and conversations lost in the wind. On a quiet corner near a coffee shop, an old man shuffled forward, his every step slow and unsteady. His hands gripped two rough wooden sticks, the kind you'd find lying on the ground in any park. They weren't crutches, they weren't even close, but they were all he had. Most people glanced at him, then looked away. Some whispered. A few even laughed. No one stopped. No one asked if he was okay. No one cared, until Tucker Carlson walked by. At first, he did what everyone else did. He noticed, but kept moving. Then, something made him stop. Maybe it was the way the man's fingers trembled as he tightened his grip on the sticks. Maybe it was the sheer struggle of it all. The effort, the exhaustion, the quiet defeat in his eyes. Tucker turned back, and in that moment, he made a decision that would take him down a path he never expected. What happened next would uncover a shocking truth and turn into a story no one could ignore. Tucker didn't hesitate. He walked straight up to the old man and asked, "Sir, do you need help?" The man looked up slowly. His face was weathered, lined with years of hardship. His eyes, dull, tired, searched Tucker's for a moment before he gave a small nod. "I just need to get to the bus stop," the old man said. His voice was weak, barely above a whisper. "It's not far, just a little farther." Tucker glanced down at the makeshift crutches. The wood was splintered, barely holding together. With every step, the man risked falling. There was no way he could make it alone. "Let me help," Tucker said, reaching for the man's arm. The old man hesitated, but allowed it. Slowly, step by step, they moved toward the bus stop. People stared. Some whispered. A few took out their phones and started recording. Then, as they reached the curb, the old man's legs buckled. His body swayed. Before he could collapse, Tucker caught him, easing him onto a nearby bench. "Are you okay?" Tucker asked. The man didn't answer at first. He just sat there, breathing heavily, his fingers still curled around the sticks. Then, in a low, broken voice, he said something that made Tucker freeze. "They took everything from me." Tucker's mind raced. Who was they? What had happened to this man? He didn't ask right away. Instead, he crouched beside him and said, "Tell me your story." The old man sighed, staring at the ground. Then, after a long silence, he began to speak. And what he said next was more than just a story. It was a secret, one that had been buried for years. A secret that, if true, could change everything. The old man's voice was barely above a whisper. "I wasn't always like this," he said. "I had a home, a family, a name that meant something." Tucker leaned in, listening carefully. "What happened?" he asked. The man swallowed hard, gripping the sticks like they were the only things keeping him grounded. "They erased me." Tucker frowned. "Who?" The old man lifted his head slowly, his tired eyes locking onto Tucker's. "People in power." A cold chill ran through Tucker's spine. "You mean the government?" The old man nodded. "Not just the government, people above them. The ones you never see, the ones who make the decisions before anyone else even knows what's happening." Tucker's mind raced. He had covered stories about corruption before, but something about this man, his presence, his words, felt different. Too real, too personal. "What did they do to you?" The old man took a deep breath. Then he said something that made Tucker's heart pound. "I was one of them." Tucker's eyes widened. "One of who?" The old man looked around, as if checking for listening ears. Then he leaned in. "I was in intelligence, high level. I saw things I wasn't supposed to see. I knew things I wasn't supposed to know." Tucker felt his pulse quicken. This wasn't just some homeless man with a sad story. This was something else. The old man's hands tightened around the sticks. His voice shook. "When I tried to expose what they were doing, they destroyed me. My accounts, wiped. My records, erased. My family, gone." They made sure no one would believe me. And when that wasn't enough, they made sure I wouldn't even exist. Tucker's throat went dry. He had heard of whistleblowers disappearing, of people getting silenced. But this was something else entirely. And now, the old man said, they're watching me, waiting for me to die, because if I talk, really talk, everything falls apart. Tucker sat back, his mind spinning. Was this man telling the truth? If so, who else knew, and how far would they go to keep it buried? Then, just as Tucker opened his mouth to ask more, the old man did something that sent chills down his spine. He reached into his tattered coat and pulled out a small, battered notebook. He placed it in Tucker's hand and whispered 4 words. This proves everything. Run. Tucker stared at the notebook in his hands. It was small, worn, barely holding together, but something about it felt heavy, like it carried a truth too dangerous to exist. What's in here? Tucker asked. The old man's hands trembled as he pulled his coat tighter around himself. His eyes darted around, scanning the street. Names, he whispered. Dates, locations, proof of what they've done. If they find out you have it, you'll never be safe. Tucker's grip tightened, his heart pounded. He had uncovered controversial stories before, but nothing like this. Why are you giving it to me? The old man let out a slow breath. Because I have nothing left to lose. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The city moved around them, oblivious to the conversation that could change everything. Then, without warning, the old man's expression changed. His face went pale. His eyes widened. Tucker followed his gaze. Across the street, a black SUV had just pulled up. The windows were tinted. The engine was still running. The old man gripped Tucker's wrist, his voice urgent now. Go, now. Tucker hesitated. Who are they? The old man's jaw clenched. The ones who erased me. The passenger door of the SUV opened. A man in a dark suit stepped out. He wasn't looking around. He was looking straight at them. The old man pushed Tucker's hand away. Don't ask questions. Don't stop. Just run. Tucker felt his breath catch in his throat. He had a choice: walk away and pretend this never happened, or take the notebook and risk everything. The man in the suit started walking toward them. Tucker didn't think. He shoved the notebook into his coat pocket, turned on his heel, and ran. What's in the notebook? Who are the men in the SUV? And how far will they go to make sure this secret never gets out? Find out in the next episode.